Your hand hold me still. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made.
Hello and welcome to Theology Chat with Chumpy. It's Tuesday night, and that's what we do on Tuesday nights is we talk about theology. Real quick, what we do on Tuesday nights, we try to talk about defining some of the theological concepts from the sermon on Sunday. We take a look at any terms that need defined, and we answer any questions that come up from the sermon, or if during the stream tonight, if something comes up that you have a question on from the sermon, feel free to put that in the comments. I'll see that, and I'll try and address it tonight if I can. If I can't, I'll look it up, and I'll try and either message you or address it next week on Tuesday night. So that's what we try and do every Tuesday night after we've had a chance to kind of digest the sermon a little bit. So with that, we'll jump right in. Pastor Melissa was preaching the last of our Joshua series, the last sermon of our Joshua series, I should say. Man, there's a lot of S's in that sentence. And she was talking about Joshua's farewell address. You get to the end of the book of Joshua, and Joshua is old, and he kind of knows that he's running out of time, really, and so he kind of gives the people at the end of this book. He says he kind of lays it out for the people of Israel and tells them how things are going to go from here. They've conquered a bunch of land. There's a little bit left that actually they hadn't conquered by this point, but he gets to the point where he's about done and he knows it, and he tells the people, you need to choose for yourselves from this day on who you're going to serve. Are you going to serve the Lord that brought you out of Egypt through the wilderness and gave you all this land, or are you going to serve any of these other gods that are going to do you no good at all? And he's kind of telling them this because Moses brought everyone out of Egypt, Joshua brought everyone into the promised land, and now it's like they're going to be kind of on their own a little bit. It's kind of like when, well, Katie's going away to college next year, and so she's going to be kind of on her own. So she's going to have to be making decisions for herself as to what she's doing here and how she does this. And it's like mom and dad aren't going to be there to make these decisions for her. And Joshua is telling them, look, you're going to be out on your own now. You need to decide for yourself, are you going to serve the Lord who has brought you here out of slavery and into the promised land, or are you going to follow these gods that led you into slavery in the first place or led these people to destruction? So that was the choice that he laid out for them. But that was the sermon on Sunday. That was a little bit of review. So we're going to talk about some of the things that we didn't get to talk about on Sunday, because with a lot of the times when we go through these stories, there's a lot that gets left out because we just don't have time on Sunday morning. So the first of those that I want to talk about. Oh, first before I get into that, I do need to talk about something. Pastor Melissa was talking about the size of Israel when they went in and all these kings that they conquered. And she said something about the size of like half the U.S. And I was like, wait a minute, whoa. Israel is not that large. So I looked it up. There's a website that you can look up and basically drag one country over onto another. And so I did that, and Israel, if you put the top of Israel on Lake Ontario, now granted, this is the modern state of Israel, but more or less, I mean, it gives you an idea. If you put the top of Israel, the northern end, on Lake Ontario, it goes down almost to Washington, D.C. And that's the size of Israel. So just to give you an idea, like north to south Pennsylvania plus some. And then it's not real wide, actually. You could probably drive across it in a couple hours. But that's the size of Israel. So there you go. Now you know. And knowing is half the battle. So anyway, I just wanted to put that up there because I thought, you know what, I need to look this up for myself. So the first thing I want to talk about that we didn't get to talk about on Sunday, or Melissa decided to punt this one off to me, I don't know, was in the book of Joshua in chapter... Oh, isn't that awful? I didn't put the reference down. In the book of Joshua, they're fighting one of these battles, all right, and I don't recall who they were fighting against. Amorites. They were fighting the Amorites, and they were fighting, and it must have been close to time for the sun to go down. Let me turn off my phone. And Joshua, well, let me pull the scripture up here. In the book of Joshua, it says, "On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, 'Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and you, moon, over the valley of Aijalon.' So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies. As it is written in the book of Jashar," sorry, that was comma, "as it is written in the book of Jashar, the sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day. There has never been a day like it before or since, a day when the Lord listened to a human being. Surely the Lord was fighting for Israel." Now, this is quite an event here. They're fighting this battle, and according to this, the sun stands still. Now, this is a sticky passage, really, because it's a miracle, basically, and so we have to think about this. And I did some research on this. There's a couple of ways we can interpret this passage. One way is you can go with a literal interpretation, and basically God performs a miracle here that seems to defy a whole lot of known laws of physics. Because for the sun to stand still, that means that the earth has stopped rotating, and the moon stopped, which means that the moon has stopped revolving. And so that's a big deal. Now, there's also the possibility that something happened that created a situation where it seemed that this was going on, and so that's another thing entirely. But one way is to interpret literally, and that God has performed this amazing miracle, but we have no way to know how he did that. Another way is to interpret it symbolically, and one of the ways that there's several things there that could be. And one is that first of all, he's referencing a book of poetry. Okay, so this is figurative language. No, this is not pre-recorded. This is figurative language, and so it could be interpreted that God is Israel's sun and moon. And so by saying that the sun stood still over Gibeon, he's saying that God stayed there with them, stayed there in the fight, and that could be what he's saying there. Another possible symbolic interpretation is that it is a demotion of the sun and the moon, because the sun and the moon were deities to these people that they're going into and fighting actually here. And so it's actually taking the sun and the moon and saying, no, they're not gods. They listen to... My computer is making some strange noises. They listen to God the Father. A third possibility is that it is epic poetry that shows how even the heavenly bodies were participating in God's battle for Israel. Because actually, at a different time in this passage, hail falls on the enemy as well. And so that would go along with this idea that this section of poetry is being quoted by Joshua to support that. And then one other note is that the book of Jasher, it references the book of Jasher in there. To my knowledge, that is a lost book. There are books that claim to be translations of the book of Jasher, but as far as I'm aware, and the little bit of research that I did on it, the authenticity of those are pretty questionable. The bottom line, though, in this passage here, is that when he gets down to the very bottom there, and I just want to highlight that last line, the bottom line to Joshua is that the most impressive thing about this is that God was fighting on Israel's behalf. There was no doubt in their mind that God was fighting on their behalf. Next thing we're going to get into is they get into the promised land, and this is just going to be a little bit of a quick run through here. They start divvying out the land, and so this is just kind of a visual of who gets placed where. A lot of the later part of the book of Joshua is kind of basically laying out what tribe is getting what areas of land and who is going to be settling where. And so just a part of that is each one of these tribes gets their own section of land, but the Levites do not get their own state. That's probably not the right word, but essentially a state. The Levites are given cities within each of these places, and the reason for that is because the Levites are the priestly people. They are to be divided up amongst all the other tribes, and they're going to basically be performing their priestly duties in amongst the rest of the people, and so they need to obviously be spread out. And so the Levite cities, there's a whole bunch of cities that they list that this place is going to be for the Levites, this place is going to be for the Levites. And so this is just another map there showing the locations of all these different sites where these were cities that were dedicated to the Levite people. In Joshua 21, he kind of lays that out there. It says, "So the Lord gave Israel all the land that he had sworn to their ancestors, and they took possession of it and settled there. The Lord gave them rest on every side." Well, that wasn't the right one. That's not what I wanted to pull up. Sorry, wrong scripture. At any rate, I don't have that one. All right then. So anyway, the Levites had cities that are spread out within all of the different tribes. And again, that was because they were the priests, and so they had to be amongst the people so that they could perform their priestly duties. One other thing that we didn't get to talk about on Sunday is cities of refuge. There is a part of the law where there's a complicated kind of, like, if somebody kills someone, this has to be done, this has to be done, this has to be done. In the event that someone accidentally kills someone, they have these cities of refuge, they're called. And so what that says is any of the Israelites or foreigners residing among them who killed someone accidentally could flee to these designated cities and not be killed by the avenger of blood prior to standing trial before the assembly. And that's in chapter 20, verse 9. And the reason for this, they set this up because, okay, if somebody comes after this person to get revenge, well, these cities are set up to protect them before they can have a trial to determine, yeah, this was an accident. And so it was kind of a little piece of protection for, like I said, an accidental death. Let's see, what else am I missing here? That was about it. There wasn't a whole lot to go over, really, this week. The vast majority of the back end of Joshua is them taking towns, them taking land, God giving them victories over these other people, and basically divvying up the land. That's a lot of the back end of Joshua. And then at the end, like I said, what Pastor Melissa preached on Sunday. So finally, they've taken the land. Joshua's given his address. There are a couple places that are still supposed to be gone out and conquered yet. But at the end of the book, it finishes up with this passage. And that's what I accidentally pulled up earlier. And it says, so the Lord gave Israel all the land he had sworn to give their ancestors, and they took possession of it and settled there. The Lord gave them rest on every side, just as he had sworn to their ancestors. Not one of their enemies withstood them. The Lord gave all their enemies into their hands. Not one of the Lord's good promises to Israel failed. Every one was fulfilled. And so what I want to highlight there is just that God had promised this to Abraham, and then they wound up in captivity in Israel, or I'm not sorry, not Israel, in Egypt, and then they're brought out of slavery, and God brings them into the promised land, and then finally they have rest. They're able to live in this land that God has given them. He's fulfilled his promises, and basically now they have the opportunity to live as God's people in the land that God has given them. And as he said before, stick to my law, do not depart to the right or to the left, or it will not go well for you. And if you've read the Old Testament, that's not what happens. They go to the right and to the left all the time. So, but that is all that I have for tonight. Like I said, not a whole lot to fill in. So to the guy watching, sorry, I don't really do debate on this. That's not really what this is for. So that's all I've got for this week. One quick note: if you're going to not this Wednesday, not tomorrow night, but the following Wednesday, the 17th, is our Ash Wednesday prayer stations. That'll be in the harbor. However, don't come in the side door like a lot of people normally would. I'm going to ask that you go around to the front and come in the front way. That way we can kind of control traffic a little bit. And that'll be from 6 till 9. So I will see you Sunday. And if I don't, I'll see you Tuesday night. Bye-bye.